Hey guys, so I want to talk about after it's been a couple days, but I want to talk about the recent firing of the Treehouse employee by Nintendo, Chris Pranger, who appeared on the Geeks with Wives podcast back on, was it August 3rd or so? So it's been about 2 weeks since he appeared in the podcast, and just a few days later he was fired by Nintendo. He released his own statement about the matter, saying that he made a huge mistake by going on that podcast. He didn't really say all the details of what he said, but he said he was very disappointed and he couldn't believe he was fired for that, even though he kind of figured he saw it coming from what he did. What I want to talk about was the reaction from other people to the firing of this guy, this employee of Nintendo. A lot of people thought it was unfair and that he shouldn't have been fired or got a second chance. And one of the guys who was outspoken about it was a fellow game developer. Well, not fellow. Well, the guy was kind of a developer. He was a localizer for Nintendo who was helping with some of the translation and he even did a little voiceover for one of the bosses in the new Star Fox game. But he wasn't necessarily a developer. But one of the developers, Cliff Blesky, how you say his name, the creator of Unreal Tournament, the first Unreal Tournament on PC, was very upset, or I guess for him, for being fired, saying that he was very disappointed in Nintendo for doing that, and that he himself would never work for Nintendo because of that. Like, he was very upset. So that made me wonder if people like him did actually listen to this podcast that this Chris Pranger was on, because I listened to the whole podcast and I have never heard an employee talk like that about Nintendo and about their inner workings of Nintendo, how they do their business practices, naming their systems, even inside information about Sakurai, from the creator of Smash Brothers. One of the guys who developed Smash Brothers, and his reactions and things like that. A lot of things that he was talking about on this podcast should most likely have never been mentioned, and especially by a guy like him. He's a low-level Treehouse employee. I say low-level. I would love to be a low-level employee myself of Nintendo. I think that would be a great job. But if you cross the line and you break the non-disclosure agreement that you sign when you join a company like Nintendo, you're going to get fired. I'm sorry. It's a given. Nintendo has never been a company that is open to the public, basically. They're not open for business where you can just go willy-nilly on any show and just talk about them. You're going to get punished, and in this case he got fired. You might be asking, well, was it really that bad what he was saying? Well, personally, I agreed with him with a lot of things that he was saying, but from a blogger, YouTuber, perspective, in my own opinion, if you're free to share your opinions about something, you can. That's fine. But if you work for Nintendo, you got to keep your mouth shut, because you're supposed to be PR for Nintendo, public relations. You're not going to be talking about negative things about the company you like. If you work for them, you're going to be talking about only the good things, of course. You're trying to do public relations, trying to build the company up. So if this Chris Pranger didn't work for Nintendo and was just a YouTuber sharing his opinions, everything would be totally fine, because I agreed with him on a lot of things that he was saying. And at the end of the day, he still loves Nintendo, and so do I. So do most of the fans out there. They still love Nintendo, despite some of the mistakes and missteps they've made. However, if you're working on the Treehouse for Nintendo, you can't say that stuff. So let's go over for a moment what he did actually say that got him fired. So in the show, you can't find this online anymore because they deleted it, this podcast that got him fired. But I did listen to the whole thing. So in the podcast, he started talking about localization of these games, Xenoblade, Last Story, and Pandora's Tower, and things like that. And he started talking about Smash Brothers. He was talking about the naming the new 3DS, why they called it new, naming of the Wii U. He talked about that, and in particularly with Xenoblade for the Wii. He was basically in a roundabout way insulting Nintendo fans, because Nintendo fans were asking, pleading, begging for that game to come to the United States when it was already released in Japan, released in Europe, was already translated in English, and there was a delay of a full year before it even came out in the United States. And during that year, the fans here in the United States didn't even have a clue as to whether it was going to come to the United States or not. So, from his perspective, the Nintendo fans are being too whiny about the situation, not understanding the business aspect of it. And he went on to explain the business aspect of it, but he was saying that the fans are basically whining too much. That's one big mistake he made right there. You shouldn't be insulting your own fan base. For a company, if you're representing the company, you can't do that. And then he started talking about the new 3DS and the criticism it got for its name just being new in the title. And he said that in Japan, when you call something new, it means something really exciting, something awesome, something cutting edge, And then he gave an example, whereas in the United States, you call something new, it's like new Coke. Nobody cares about that, or they think that's a stupid name. But he said this in relation to a Nintendo product. Mistake number 2, you can't do that. You just can't do that. Everything he was saying had a negative followed by a positive, followed by a negative. And if you're a PR guy for Nintendo, if you watch Bill Trinan, some of the other guys that work for Nintendo, even Reggie, God forbid, but even Reggie, he's the master at glazing over everything in a positive image. Like, no, nothing's wrong with him, with Nintendo. Of course, but like guys like Bill Trinan, they're only talking about Nintendo, and they're only talking about positive things about Nintendo. They're not talking about critical things. They're not even touching those subjects when they speak. Only positive things. This guy did nothing of that. He was negative, 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 followed by a positive, 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 followed by a negative, negative, followed by a positive. So basically, that's how you can get away with criticizing someone. Is when that's what an employer does to an employee. They criticize. They do a positive followed by a negative followed by a positive to kind of, tidy it up. That's what he was trying to do, and he's not in the position to do that. Basically, it's what it came down to. And so that's, and then it came to the Wii U also, the naming of it, and he basically said that the name was a mistake. In another roundabout way, criticizing the name and then following up with a positive. Again, I can't get the podcast back to play it back for you, but basically he was talking about how people didn't understand that the system was a new system, and he gave his own experience of how the name was confusing with one of his, I think his mom or his grandma or something like that. It's talking about how his own family member was going to go thinking about buying the Wii U, but she was saying, oh, can I just buy the controller and the games will still play on my old system? He even gave that example of how he had that discussion with her of how it was a new system, and he even shared some his own frustration with that. So again, you can't do that. Not if you work for Nintendo. So if you had a chance to hear that podcast, you would totally understand why he got fired. It made perfect sense, to me at least. Now, if he just went on the podcast and just had a normal interview and didn't say anything like that and got fired, then yeah, I would have been like, what the heck? Why did he get fired? There was no reason for that. But there is every reason in the world for this guy to get fired, and you hate to see a guy lose his job. You know, you don't want that for anybody. You don't wish it. I don't wish it upon anybody. But sadly, if you heard what he said, and for the company he's working for, you saw it coming. You're going to see it coming. You know, if you do that, you're going to get fired. And you just can't have a loudmouth as a low-level employee for a company like Nintendo, a very guarded company. Oh yeah, and the other thing he talked about was Smash Brothers. When they did the promotional trailer for the game, he talked about Sakurai, you know, the guy who developed the game with his bare hands, basically, for Nintendo. He basically talked about, he didn't say he was anal, but he basically said that he was anal in a roundabout way, saying how meticulous and OCD he was in the promotional aspect of that game, trying to get everything just perfect so their game would be represented in 8 players just right on the promo trailers. So do you think Sakurai wanted him to say that? I seriously doubt it. He never said that himself, so why would we be hearing new information from a low-level employee about a very high-up developer in Nintendo for a gigantic, huge franchise like that? So there's another reason for you. So basically, you know, with guys like Cliffy B from Epic, or he used to work for Epic, criticizing Nintendo for firing him, they had to. Honestly, you just can't do that kind of stuff. Nintendo can't let their lower-level employees go rambling on about the inner workings of the company. It's bad PR, but it's bad public relations. And Nintendo's never been a company that's going to stand for that. And they never have been in the past. I've never seen that happen before. And I doubt, especially now that they're, you know, trying to find a new president of the company, they're not going to let someone go do that now either. So that's my thoughts on the matters, guys. And let me know what you think of your take on the situation in the comment section. And have a good one.